Happy Friday night, everybody. Happy Friday and cheers, my dears. I hope I have the thing up. I'm usually overwhelmed unless I'm early. Let me get the camera in a little bit closer. Let's see. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Friday. You made it. You made it to the end of the week. And we are together again, and I am so excited for tonight's episode. Cheers, my dears. Linda, happy Friday night. Good to see you. I'm having a sip. It's going to be a heavy sort of storytelling episode tonight, using these amazing copies of this fantastic periodical that is now defunct, I'm sorry to say, the Wall Street Journal. We're going to look at. I thought, I had a giant stash of them, like all of the years, all of the issues, and I thought, we'll just scratch the surface and touch on the best points in each of these magazines. It's not happening. I went through here. I don't know if you can see all my foxing on the dog ears. Just the first year, just the first volume 1, issues 1, 2, 3, 4 is as far as I'm sure we're going to get tonight because these are so wonderful. I'm going to be sure that I can wet my whistle and stay fresh to be able to get through all this wonderful and important talk. Mom, I'm so glad I caught you. She was starting to get into that time of night that's like dozy, and remembered there was cocktail time. I called it just the right time, right? Oh, you watched Jocelyn's making dough video. Joy, good to see you. Cheers, my dears. Happy Friday. Oh, thank you, Linda. I went live a couple hours ago. I was at the stove. And I'm going to show you what we came up with over here. I was at the stove and I was working on some stockings. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but being at the stove meant that Jocelyn, who was sick today, she was actually sick earlier in the day, to be quite fair, she came over and decided to assist me, and she is such an assistant. We ended up, if you are on Facebook, we ended up recording a live video, which I really have been enjoying doing it, because I see that some people find it right away and can join us and make comments and ask questions. And she really did the video. She ran the video. She showed her technique for dyeing. I'll tell you all about it in just a second. It's really remarkable. There are some things that technology is so good for, and then there are other things that it's not so good for, like getting a new phone and not having any of the updates or passwords ready, opening the computer and hitting the on button. But there are some things that are really good and they work well, don't they? That's one of them, this going live on Facebook thing. So if you are on Facebook and you're new to us here, our group is the Rug Cooking and Punch Needle Club. And you will find we're heading towards 7,500 people now, which is extraordinary. Such nice, helpful people who are always ready to share ideas and information and welcome newcomers. So you are very welcome there, for sure. Oh, I feel like my mouth has been running and I've been missing people who are logging on. Catherine, great to see you. Martha, great to see you. Martha, I'm back to buttons. I know you probably thought I forgot, and I didn't. Life just, it was like an undertow. And this is so crazy, but I have this dream from time to time, and I think it's one of these dreams like going to school and you don't have any pants on, or touching your tooth and it falls out in your hand, these dreams that all of us tend to have. But this is the dream, and I've done this in real life too, not often, so don't be worried, Mama. This has happened in real life too. Have you ever had the dream where you are floating, like in the ocean, like you're just in the surf and it's very comfortable and warm, and you're just floating and your ears are underwater and you kind of hear like the sounds of the ocean, like all that sort of whirring sound, and everything else is shut out and you are utterly relaxing, and then you open your eyes and you realize that you have drifted quite far, right? So this has happened to me in real life, and you get into this thing, and in dreams, you get into this thing that's like a panic, a proper panic, right? Because you're pretty far out, and then sometimes it's hard to swim back against the way that the tide is moving, the water's moving, never mind an undertow, right? It's hard to get back, and you have these moments of extreme panic. And in those moments, of course, when this has happened to me in real life, it's only been a couple of times, I certainly don't want to draw the attention of the lifeguard and alert him that I'm having a struggle because it's so embarrassing. But that moment of being panicked and swept away, and then that very overwhelmingly positive moment of realizing that you got it, that you're strong and you're going faster than the water is pulling you, and you're making your way back to shallow, and then finally your feet touch. It's just like a metaphor for life, isn't it? It's one of those things that happens in real life, but it's still a great metaphor for life. I just feel like life has been like that lately, and I keep dreaming that, except I drift really far out, like Gilligan's Island style, like way out there, hopeless, you know. And then I think of that movie, I can't even remember what it's called, where those people were just floating. They were left behind by the tourist boat, and the sharks presumably like started like snacking on them. Anyway, that's what life has been like lately, this kind of crazy busyness. And on a personal note, I had a very good call today with the agent who I'm working on the book for, who found me to do this book, which is the reason why I haven't been as present as I would like to be in the Facebook group and with you in general. But I was very relieved that she liked everything that I had going on. I was so worried that the voice that I was using to write the book, which is the voice that I use here with you, which is my actual authentic voice, that wouldn't somehow be right for this book, and that it wouldn't be sort of neutral enough or black and white enough. I was afraid that we weren't going to be able to, in the end, come to a kind of agreement about what the tone of the book should sound like, because I feel very strongly about all rugging crafts being very approachable and not elite. So we did so well on the call this morning. I felt so good about it, and everything is on course. So huge relief. I started to swim again. I got past all those weird breakers and undertows, and my feet are finally touching the sand again. How many metaphors can I use in one sentence, right? So things are better, and I am super looking forward to this nice, cozy episode tonight. Let me finish. And the whole point was, Martha, that I'm back to buttons, right? Another metaphor. But feeling like my feet are touching the ground again, I started to think about the things that were most important to me that I left unfinished or left incomplete in my mind, because I had been sketching out all your mom's buttons that she collected over the years, and I am turning them into a collection in honor of your mom, and I haven't forgotten. And that's the next thing that I'm going to do with my free time. Kirsten, good to see you. Happy Friday. Kirsten, we have to thank Kirsten for tonight, because she sent this giant lump of Wall Street journals, like all of them ever, forwarded it straight to me, and I'm sending it back to you, Kirsten, when we're done reviewing them, which is going to be a little bit of time. And it was so thoughtful and nice of you to do that, because it's so much material for us. And I did have a ton of the Wall Street journals, but I didn't have all. And it was very piecey. And, every time I spot them on the buy and sell groups, on the Raw Cooking Buy and Sell groups on Facebook, they're always gone. And I think, oh, I could really use them for this show, because if I get them, I share them. And I feel like then many people, multiplies, many people can enjoy them at the same time. And I keep missing them. So thank you so much for setting us up so nicely for foreshadowing, not just this episode tonight, but I think there's at least the whole future week, at least, is going to be devoted to Wall Street Journal. Carol, great to see you. Carol, I need to talk to you about that Prati rug. Don't let me forget. I have to do it before the weekend is out. I really need that. I need the image at least. I absolutely want that. Happy cocktail night. You're frying up some panfish while you watch. Perfect. You only need one ear for this episode. It's going to be mostly listening and less showing tonight. Oh, you love our Friday night fish fries in Wisconsin. That is so nice. I remember from Catholic school days, like, we didn't always do it in our house, Mom, but certainly when we went, and who cares, right? But certainly when I went over to friends' houses, that Friday fish night was a big thing, and it is such a nostalgic thing to me still, thinking about fish on Fridays. Brings me right back to those St. Luke's days. Caroline, I'm so glad you made it. Welcome and happy Friday night. Oh, Carol, you are there. Happy cocktail night to everyone. You're a cheap date. You're having a cup of tea. Well, that is okay, as long as you are enjoying it. Christine, yay, Friday night. Internet problems tonight. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully it stays, you stay with us. It stays strong. Let me just read over. Cynthia, you got your bingo prize wool and yarn today. I am so glad. I am so glad. I hope you love it. All right, I think I'm caught up to all the buddies, and I'll say hello. Looking forward to seeing the button pad. I know you never give pressure, Martha. You're so soft and kind and gentle. You're such a great person to be friends with. Thumbs up, please. So I have so many things to tell you. Where to begin? I will begin with what I've already started with, which is the whole Jocelyn thing. It occurred to me. I was thinking about let me begin somewhere else. I was thinking about, this is a new month, right? It's November. Knock, knock, who's there? November. And I was thinking swatch set, right? I mentioned this the other day. And I had this brainstorm about doing food, glorious food. This is a big food month, and so is December. And I thought, let's look at the colors of food. And I'll tell you, as soon as I had that thought, I had to peel myself away from the Hallmark movies, which is not easy these days, but luckily I hit a repeat. And I went into and it was a bad one too. I went into the kitchen and I started working on these colors. And I wanted to do all food colors because I had a list written down from all my old recipes books from like the 1920s to the 1960s. And I wrote down all these very cozy recipes, mostly seasonal, from different places around the country and Canada. And I had this vision for what I wanted to do in terms of color, all food colors. And I'll tell you, that evening that I was standing there at the stove with those 4 burners going, it looked like I was actually cooking, which never happens. I would love for it to happen. After this book is done, I will start cooking again, but it never happens. But those pots were filled with like colors of squash and eggplant, aubergine, greens, green bean salad type colors, lots of purples, lots of berries. Well, I'll show you sort of hammy colors, right? Pink meat colors, hammy pork colors. The monitor at night is so awful, but this set is like, I'm calling it the extra chubby set, right? Extra chubby. Because instead of being 25 colors, this month it's 35 colors. So I'm going to list this tomorrow as a swatch set. And every single one of these colors is monitor is awful because, for example, this is quite a nice green right here. This is, I think that's tropical salad, recipe tropical salad. Each one of these colors has a recipe from one of these old recipe books. So starting on Monday, I'll, for example, just pick a color and say, for example, tropical salad. And I'll tell you the old inn or sort of roadside cafe, road stop that the recipe comes out of. And I'll tell you the recipe live just in case you have a pencil and you want to write it down. You want some recipe ideas to take us through the season together. The next couple of months, I'll be doing this with the swatch colors. I'll introduce another swatch palette in September that's more geared toward Christmas and Christmas holidays, right? Winter holidays, I should say, not just Christmas. So I'm really loving these. Lots of berry pies, lots of pumpkin stuff in here, lots of soups and cookies. This is just a delicious month. And as soon as I photograph the colors tomorrow in better light, you're going to fall in love. And I put them in random order. I'll put them in a different order so you can see how many yellows, how many browns, how many purples, how many beiges you've got. But this is a great neutral palette for your swatch set. So this will be 35 swatches that are 3 inches by, I think, 13 by 3. Quite big. So for each of these, it'll be, let's see. Oh no, that's all. They're actually quite big. They're going to be this big when all is said and done, which is, it's quite big. It's quite a lot of wool. So we'll figure that out. I'll put that up tomorrow, but we will enjoy that together tomorrow. And if you want to kick in for December any of your family recipes, maybe we should go in that direction for next month. I want to stick with the food theme and get into more sort of holidays and traditional and special and different and a variety of different kinds of holiday celebrations. If you have some nice recipes to send in, that would be great because I can read them out on coffee time and I can make a special color for that particular recipe. But this really is a beautiful large set this month. Very useful colors, very autumnal colors. Let's see. Dad didn't like fish so much. No, he didn't. He was much more of a lobster person, and I'm definitely taking after him in that regard. Excited for the button project. Me too. I love this button project that Martha really inspired me with her knowledge of buttons and her mother's great collection and the manner that her mother collected in by just putting the kids in the back seat of the car, the station wagon, right, Martha, and driving through Canada, taking a vacation, but actually seeking out opportunities to roll down the car window and say, do you have any buttons, to people who are standing in their yards? And she managed to collect, right, Martha, am I telling the story okay? So many buttons and important buttons too. Very serious collector. So I wanted to turn many of those buttons, I want to do many of them as rug hooking designs in honor of Martha's mother, as seat cushions or anything you want. You can always hook the background and frame it out like a square or a circle frame. But I was thinking seat cushions all over the places. Button seat cushions all over the place. What could be more cozy and charming than that, right? These beautiful, really old buttons. Get out the elastic pants. That's right, Joy. Not for you, Joy. You are super, super, super fit. Oh, I'm just catching up. Sharon, good to see you. You love your elastic pants. Me too. I bought some elastic pants at TJ Maxx today. So good. And I even went up a size, even though I do plan to go to the gym, because yeah, I mean, why have an elastic cutting into your gut, right? That can't be good. Wonderful swatch set. Thank you, Martha. So, I did that, and then I started thinking to myself, I have not got, in all of this crazy busyness, I have not gotten a dye class set up for this month. So what I'm going to do for this month is I'm going to do a pre-recorded dye class. Not that I don't love being together, but there are always people who can't join and watch the recording anyway. And I thought, what I'll do this time is I'll put together an extra large dye set with squirt bottles and potted dyes, right? Never packets, potted in squirt bottles, so there's no chance of losing it or having all that poison fly up in your face. I'm going to do that with a bunch of different techniques, and I'll put it, I'll make it available for sale with the entire supply kit, so you have tons of supplies coming to you. But the sort of prestige of this month that I think is very smart, I ordered an absolute ton, like almost literally a ton of stockings, like nylon stockings in white. And I want to start working toward hooking Grenfell style, like with stockings, right? I thought, what a great tribute to our friends in Canada. What a great thing for this time of year. And when these nylon stockings came, I started thinking, wait a minute, I think we have a class here. I'm going to call the dye class for this month, the stockings were hung. I hope that's enough. Because if I write, the stockings were hung by the chimney with care, that might be too much, right? But I'm going to put, I would say, these are all individual white stockings that I got. And I'm going to show you this one close up. This is one of the ones that Jocelyn did today. These are nylon stockings. And if you've seen our episodes or you know something about Grenfell rugs, look at this craziness. Nylon dyes so well. And for those of you who don't need a dye class and you're just curious to see how it all, shakes out, if you have your regular chemical dyes that you use for wool, like you've got your ProChem or you've got your Dharma or you have your Cushing, these are also going to work great for nylon. Sometimes different materials, cotton doesn't always work great with the same dyes. Certainly the stretch velvet, like anything with a synthetic, will not work with these dyes. But if you already have a library of these dyes, you can't imagine how well the dyes that you already have are going to do on nylon stockings. Sorry, I keep saying silk stockings because of that book. Some of them are these thinner ones that have like the kind of support top. So you get two different textures in the same stocking. This is one stocking. But Joss did a bunch of these this afternoon, and that was the genesis of our live video. But you can see there's like some eggplant burgundy, some dark nebula navy kind of thing. They're gorgeous. And of course I'm going to do a video before I even put the class up on cutting it and hooking with it, just so you know what the possibilities are. But if you know Grenfell rugs, you know that nylon hooks beautifully. So I'm going to make sure I have a ton of nylons. I'm going to say at least 15 in the set for this month. So you can squirt away. It's more of a pumpkin pie one. She did some very subtle stuff, limited palette. Can't really see, but there's a lot of yellows, vanillas in here too. Yeah, kind of like a pumpkin pie theme. Some of them are extraordinary. Better in different lights, so I'll photograph tomorrow. This one's got many shades of purple in it, kind of a sangria. She really went to town, as she says. So many shades. But I mean, the nylon is amazing. One of the ones she dyed, this is one of the ones she dyed live, that she used her mopping technique in the casserole pan. I think this one is beautiful. Let me bring it closer. I wonder if you can see that. It's a lot of yellows, purples, blues, right? This is probably more indicative of what the colors are like. Always having issues with color. Isn't that extraordinary? I mean, this is going to be unbelievable to work with. This one she did today live. I got to be careful because it's still a bit wet over my computer, but you can see how brilliant the colors are. So if you are on Facebook, do watch the video that Joss did. She was very forthcoming with everything. She did an amazing job considering it was a by the seat of the pants kind of job. Look at all those great colors in there. Isn't that just decadent? So Yeah, she was very busy this afternoon, and I want to answer a couple of questions. I'll answer in the Facebook group too. People were asking, what was the first question? I think the temperature I had it at was 320. I think that was a bit high. I think next time we'll do more like 300. Nothing burnt. It was all fine, but the reason it was fine was because it was first soaking in Synthropol and it was wet. If you're not wet and you've got nylon in the oven, even for 5 minutes, you're at risk of it burning, right? But everything was wet, so I knew I wasn't burning or sticking to the pans. So that was fine. I did I would say between 300 and 320 was the answer to the first question. And then somebody wrote later and asked, what was the other question? Oh, did I put them back in the oven to dry them? And I didn't. They're just drip drying right here. They're on a rack right next to me so I could show you. But no, I don't put them back in the oven. And I didn't even put them in the salad spinner this time because I was afraid they were going to work their way through all that sort of lattice, all that plastic lattice. And I thought, no need. I wrung them out old time with my hands that still work, right? And just hung them on the line, and they're not that wet, so they'll definitely be dry by tomorrow. So no, I didn't dry them. And I could have equally, instead of putting them in the oven, I could have equally wrapped them in like saran wrap or done that in the microwave. More on that with these Wall Street journals. But no matter what you do, all you need to do is make sure that you get the finished dye hot, right? You need to heat, set the color. And using heat, whether you're using the stove, a steam basket over a pan, immersion dyeing, which means dyeing it underwater, microwave, if you live in a place that still has heavy sunlight, the sun, any kind of heating source that you need to use to set the dye. Once the dye is set, you're good. You rinse it out, wring it out, make sure it's not completely bleeding out, right? And then you just hang it to dry, and it's super easy. And again, I will demonstrate this week cutting it up and hooking with it, just to remind you, or beginners who are not familiar with hooking Grenfell style. That whole story, that's a great episode to catch if you're not aware of that whole chapter of rug hooking. Definitely look for that in Coffee Time. We've done many episodes that talk about the Grenfell mission and Grenfell style hooking with pantyhose. And what a great treat that is. So that's certainly something you can do without me, but I'm offering that this month if you would like the supplies. Oh, Christine, you saw it. She's so confident. She is so she's sometimes, I was going to say she's overconfident, but I guess there is no such thing at that age. She's amazing. Courtney, good to see you. She's amazing. She's so good. She's so good. I hope she stays this good. I'm off the rails a little bit. I hope that she's a little more on the rails than I am. But yeah, she's got a great personality, and she loves this work. If I can just hand her this business over at some point in the far future, and she wants it and loves it and runs with it, that would be like the greatest thing I can think of. Her and Teddy, of course. So, I'm glad that some of you are catching that. I'll see if I can load it onto YouTube. I'm not sure I can, but we'll do other videos on YouTube about dyeing with nylons. So, one more thing. I just want to remind you, on Sunday, I will be at Madison, Connecticut, at Madison Yarn, Mad Yarn, in person to teach the Pilgrim Hat Prati, right? Which is a beautiful kit with the upturned pilgrim hat being used as a vase, tons of beautiful flowers, Prati leaves around them. Very tasteful, very controlled. Prati in context, really, I think, good use of all of those beautiful petals. So I'll be there in person to do that on Friday. That's one of the only classes I have between now and the end of the year because of busyness. So if you are anywhere near, and it's a beginner rug hooking class, but if you are more sort of expert, I will tailor it to be a bit more difficult and challenging. We'll make it work, but it's going to be a great class. It's going to be a lot of fun on Sunday in Madison, Connecticut. So that will be me doing that in person. And let's talk about the Wall Street Journal because it's so good. I'm not the rails, but I am so far from the rails. I'm ready for bedlam. I'm ready for a special jacket and a special bed, But it was a good day. So, let's start. Let's begin. This is, like I said, it's going to be heavy reading. These Wall Street Journal periodicals, this is the first one. First issue, first year, volume 1, issue 1, came out April 2002. Absolutely beautiful premise. I don't even know where to begin with this magazine because it's not really, I guess it is a magazine. It's a very small periodical, right? It's a staple-bound periodical. The inside looks like this, right? A lot of white pages, but also a lot of color. I have overlooked these magazines for a long time, and I am ashamed to say it, because when I first looked at them, I'm always like a predator, right? I'm always looking through things going, what can I use for coffee time? And frantic. And when I looked at it at leisure tonight with Christmas music playing in the background and a glass of wine over here, Gidget, good to see you. April, good to see you. Happy Friday night. Cheers, my dears. When I looked at them with the eye of doing them for coffee time, and I was not rushing and being like a total cannibal, I thought, this is impossibly charming. If you see these on these reselling groups or on eBay or whatever, snap them up. They're small issues, but they are gems. And I have to say, I'm going to say it, nothing comes close to this. In terms of periodicals, this magazine calls itself the Wall Street Journal, tagline, an extraordinary magazine for rug hookers with heart. That's exactly what this is. That's exactly what this is. Premier issue was $5.95. Absolutely charming, right? So let's look at it together. I have these 4 issues to look at tonight. And they're so small, but they're so dense with interesting, useful information. Lots of history, beautiful, conversational, fun, friendly tone to them, super informational. These are not picture books by any means, right? These are not rug hooking magazine. This is, you'll see. Instead of describing it, let me just tell you. So lots of reading in here. Perfect bedside reading, right? So you open it up and it's this kind of thing, text. So this is why I flipped through in the past, because I'm a pig, and I'm one of the people who I don't like the look of, who just rush through everything, grabbing and taking, right? This is something you have to sit with and enjoy, and it's worth it. So for example, page 2, timely inspirations. And this is written by Bonnie. So Bonnie's one of the 2 founders of the magazine. I think it's, let me see if I can get back to that. She does biographies on the first, page 1, a hooking hello. And she says, my name is Bonnie Smith, known to some as Ivy of Ivy Cottage Rugs. I'm a hooker and designer of wool rugs. Primitive, simple designs are my style. I've hooked for a short time compared to many whom I've met. In that short span of time, about 4 years, I've become completely absorbed by this wonderful comeback craft. I like that, like comeback kid. I love to express through my hands what's in my heart. It's in my nature to share and teach and encourage anyone who's willing to learn. I'm a firm believer that hooking is supposed to be fun, relaxing, invigorating, challenging, and rewarding. What we do with our hands should add to our life and to those around us, giving joy, acceptance, and balance to the otherwise necessary tasks of life. My goal is to record these beliefs, bring them to something tangible that can be shared, in inspirations that help us grow, learn together, and in turn to inspire others. As we go along our way, we have a point of contact, a journal, recording our paths that cross back and forth. It is my hope that you will join me. We will become good friends, make more friends as we go, and who knows where it will lead. This place where the hearts and hands meet. Okay, let's get started. And then it says, my name is Tina Ackerman, a.k.a. Bonnie's daughter. So there's the relationship. And she gives a short introduction, too. So this is the first page of the first issue of Wall Street Journal. The second page is written by Bonnie, and this is what it says. Now, I'm going to read passages here because it's so good. So if you are sitting there and your hooking is somewhere over there, you should just grab it, put it on your lap. You don't need to look at my face. You can just listen and enjoy, because there are so many things that are said in the first 4 issues of this magazine journal that you are going to want to lock into your heart and into your head. It'll keep you going. This is like the food for thought that is going to keep you going through the winter, without a doubt. Timely inspirations. I get inspired sometimes at the weirdest times. This is Bonnie talking, like when I'm sleeping. Have you ever kept a notebook by your bed? It is a must for people like me, and I like to think that there are people like me somewhere out there losing sleep. I am inspired right now to talk about wool, just about my favorite subject. Wool is an inspiring product. It is soft, comforting, forgiving, and it behaves itself. So because of the very nature of wool, there are many things that we can do to it and with it. It keeps us warm, sometimes for years and years, like an old friend. It can be recycled, used over and over in different ways. It can be spun, knitted, felted, boiled, baked, dyed, and over-dyed, taken apart, put back together, patched, woven, appliqued, shaped, gathered, pressed, steamed, and oh yes, stripped and hooked and poked and prodded. It has been known to cover us as hats, on our beds, heads, floors, our toes, pillows, pockets, purses, and bows. There are bed rugs, not to be confused with bed bugs, mug rugs, placemats, plain mats, bath mats, table toppers, covers for footstools, bum pads for rockers. All of these things can be combined. We can be as creative as we want to be with the process of pulling loops. We can hook mittens and kittens, houses and horses, nightmare, nighttime, daytime, so many choices. Let's think about buttons and beads, sayings and tweeds, plaids and checks. It's endless, I guess. Just realized it rhymes. And in the spirit of sharing, be double blessed. Oh my, oh yes, creative energy at its best. Wish you wool! Exclamation point, Bonnie. So, I mean, this is just extraordinary lyrical writing, isn't it? I mean, it's just beautiful laundry lists of our favorite things, isn't it? My mom says, I keep a sketchbook by my bed with me so that I can turn on the light to write or sketch whenever my mind comes up with a terrific idea. That's so true. You know, and it's so, I think that's such an important point, because I know a lot of us, I mean, struggle with all kinds of things. Insomnia, depression, illness, all kinds of things, right? And sometimes when you wake up in the middle of the night, it's that hit by a train panic feeling of, oh boy, it's 4:17. I'm never going to get back to sleep. I'm never going to have the energy to make it through the day tomorrow. How am I ever going to make it? Right? And then you're thinking, I'm going to feel like I'm hungover all day, like I'm just sick, like I feel pukey all day. I'm never going to make it. Or when you wake up in the middle of the night, you can force yourself, right? You can control your thoughts. You can force yourself to think of things that you're working on, projects, empty spaces, colors, new projects, ideas, designs, words to use in the borders. And you can turn on your light and you can start writing things down. Because as soon as you turn on that light, it really dispels all that darkness, right? Which is a metaphor, and it's real too. It changes things, right? And it's a bummer to wake up, and it's a bummer to be sitting there in the middle of the night with a sketchbook. But you might as well do it, right? I mean, if you're going to be awake anyway, you might as well be awake recording great ideas, right? I mean, that only makes sense. And just remind yourself that we all have that thing where we wake up in the middle of the night and it's awful, and you panic about the next day and you just can't get back to sleep, and it's hard the next day. Nothing makes it easier, but we all have that. So make the most of it. Do this thing with the sketchbook, and see how many great ideas you can evolve. Just changing that pattern from being laying there in panic to just waking up and putting the light on and recording some thoughts, any thoughts, right? Yeah, you should do that, Joy. Even if you're a great sleeper, you should do that. You just never know, right? And I feel like it's, Courtney gives her sister a heart. I feel like it's one of those things, like when you're at the restaurant and the food is taking forever and you get up and go to the bathroom and it's 100% chance the food's going to arrive while you get up to go to the bathroom. It's like, it feels like one of those things, doesn't it? That if you put the notebook by the bed, are you going to have to then wake up because you're suddenly going to wake up in the middle of the night? Or does it work in reverse, right? Is it like a double bluff that because the notebook is there, you're not going to wake up in the middle of the night and have ideas? You don't know until you try, right? So this continues on to be such a charming book. In every issue, there's 2 big pages that talk about just hooking, and you know it's fairly repetitive when you already hook, and when you look at each issue. But if you come in at issue number 2 or issue number 14, volume 4, you really need these 2 pages in every issue that tell you how to hook. If you are a beginner and you buy just a random issue and you don't know which one to get, it's too difficult to try to get them in chronological order, and it is, you know, you take one and you just know that in the beginning of the book, they will tell you, mother and daughter will tell you how to hook, how to pull up loops. It's going to be a very good description, and it's unique and different each time. They write it fresh each time, which must be tough, which must have been tough, right? There's this great feature in every issue called The Primitive Mind of Miss Prim. And it's written by Karen Kahle, Kahle. And this is one of the features that really got my heart pumping dangerously, because every issue she writes something, and it's a quarterly periodical. And again, it's not out anymore, right? But every issue, Karen writes something extraordinary. So I'm going to read you what she writes in this maiden issue because it's so good. My mom says, absolutely, those ideas are our life's blood. They energize us, and we have to grab and express them before they drift away and leave us forever. That's so true, because those crazy middle of night ideas, even though they seem so big in the middle of the night, big enough to keep you up, right, and ruin your night, in the morning they're gone. They're tiny. They're gone. They're invisible. They're like dust that's drifted away. You really have to get up and record. My best ideas visit in the wee hours of the night. They are welcome visitors to light up your life. Oh, Courtney. So I'm not going to read all of hers. I'm going to read this one, and I'm going to read a few of them because they're so good. The Primitive Mind of Miss Prim by Karen Kahle. And incidentally, if anybody knows any of the names that I'm mentioning in this, because I'm also new to hooking into this world, if you know any of these people, please let me know. I was trying to trace people on Facebook, and it wasn't really working, and I was trying to trace places. 2002 was a while ago, as things go. So I was just wondering if anybody knew any of these people, or if, we're super lucky and anyone's on the thread who's contributed to this magazine. I would love to know, because I'd love to give a huge shout out to you. So Karen says, perfection is a word that should be handled with care. When I was a girl, the highest compliment that you could ever hope to achieve was for somebody to say of your work, why, that looks store-bought. But the times, they are a-changin', and now many folks have come to appreciate the look and charms of things that are handcrafted. Primitive hooking folks understand this. Creativity sometimes breaks the rules. Straight of the grain is one thing, but what of the straight rug edges? I don't make my garden edges straight, or my rug edges for that matter. Form follows function, as the saying goes. So why must the edges of a rug be perfectly straight? If a machine produced a rug, the edges would all have to be straight. A machine can't put interesting variation in its output. Every one is straight and exactly the same as the last. We call this run of the mill, literally, right? That's the expression, run of the mill. But a human hand can make sophisticated choices in its crafting, like making a gently curving edge or putting variation in the whole shape of the rug. A homey quality adds charm and whimsy to the finished product, and it imbues the rug with soul. A machine can't do that. Some of the rugs of yesteryear still exist for us to study and enjoy. These are often quite out of square and have taken on a different shape altogether. Mimicking this time-warm effect brings the spirit of the old rugs to our new rugs. Unfortunately, perfection can be reserved for things that look machine-made. Certainly, you could judge your work based on good craftsmanship, but it should also be judged on its artistic merit. Primitive rugs are not just rugs. They are works of art of the humblest kind. They are the kind of art that tugs at your heartstrings. Allow yourself the freedom of self-expression. Primitive hooking is not a bunch of do's and don'ts. It's a bunch of discover your own ways and do what your heart tells you. It's an art, not a science. It's a craft that can be learned in many little moments of sharing among enthusiastic hookers. Is that handmade? Is the greatest compliment of the 21st century. We have come full circle. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? I just love what she wrote. I love what she wrote. And I'm reading the sidelines too. And, and so beautiful. So in every issue, Miss Prim, Karen Kahle, writes something gorgeous like this. I'll read a couple more in the next issues before we break. And then they talk about things in every issue like dyeing. A whole page, a whole article on a specific kind of dyeing. Very practical, very useful, no holes barred, no secrets kept. And then there are patterns like this, right, in every issue that you would be at liberty to copy and use for personal uses, of course. And this one says, Reach for a Star, patterned by Bonnie Smith of Ivy Cottage Rugs, created especially for the premiere issue, April 2nd, the Wall Street Journal. And also in every issue is this beautiful feature called Tom Baker's Sweet Shop. And there is a recipe on the same page in every issue. And this recipe is for sour cream pound cake. I won't read the recipe, but it is, I mean, just having a nice recipe in every, this goes along with our food swatches, right? In every issue is so cozy, right? Getting back to cozy. Remember a few months ago I was reading that book, Cozy? I forget who the writer is now. But she's, the whole book is about, I lost interest by the end of the book, I have to admit. But the whole book is about, even when life is busy and crazy and structured and not charming and not nostalgic or romantic, it's just black and white, must be done, nose to the grindstone kind of a thing. Even when life is like that, that you can choose the different things that you love that are familiar to you, the cozy things in your life, and repeat them. Look for them, force them, repeat them. And when you see a recipe like this in a book, it is that kind of cozy, isn't it? This is a rug hooking book, but yeah, I want to see a recipe on at least one page, right? Puts me in a different frame of mind, puts my head in the kitchen instead of on the couch hooking. That's right, Martha, the crooked edges. I mean, not enough can be said about using irregular edges, that's for sure. Judy Taylor did that great book. I'm going to forget the name of it now. Breaking the Boundaries. Was it Breaking the Boundaries? Where she featured that one artist, I'll never remember the name, I'm ashamed to say, it's in Coffee Time, and I handled it perfectly. I had all the names on the tip of my tongue when I ran the episode, but it was a long time ago. Many rugs featured that were very irregular, and that was the sort of charm of them. That was the prestige, right? Was having this very irregular edge. Added a lot to the design itself. Not enough can be said about that. You love this, Joy. This is all such liberating talk in these Wall Street journals. I love them too. And she has it's very personal. That's the thing, isn't it? I Am a Hooker says, when you're shopping for wool, okay, I'm going to read this. I'm a hooker, like IMA, as if it's a first name. Hang on. I'm a Hooker says, when shopping for wool at your local thrift shop, take with you, here it comes, a cigarette lighter and a pair of tweezers. Use the tweezers to pull out a tiny thread from the seam, take it outside, hold it in the tweezers and burn the thread. Smell the thread. It should have an unpleasant odor. That is wool. Make a fold in the garment, so you go back inside, make a fold in the garment to create an edge. Hold the fold up to the light. You want a hairy, fuzzy surface as opposed to bald or smooth. Now check the weave. Ask yourself, can I actually see the weave, the individual threads, or are they obscured by fuzziness? You want the threads to be held together by a little fuzziness. If each thread is clear to the eye and smooth, it means that the fabric will ravel. What is the purpose of the garment? What is the purpose of the garment? Few ladies' dresses are made from desirable wool, like only a few. You will still find worsted, crepe, and jersey garments that are of no use. Now, I have to pause there and say, since 2002, I think we have a completely different attitude about this. And we are constantly using, for example, worsted, crepe, jersey, garbage bags, candy wrappers. Anything that can pull through your backing is worthy of hooking. But this is coming out of like the 80s, 90s, right? Coming out of those years of Pro McGowan training being very, very rigid. Nothing against Pro McGowan, of course. She's my idol. But coming out of that very rigid approach to rug hooking and getting much more into the British school of rag rugs and using all kinds of materials. So that has certainly changed. Anything that you like from the thrift store, you should buy and you will be able to use. You might not be able to use it underfoot. You might not be able to block it with the heat of your iron, but you will be able to use it for your hooking. Even if it's difficult to hook with, you still hook with it. If you love it, you still hook with it. Even though it's a pig's breakfast, you take your scissors at the end and you clip it and clean it up and you forget that it gave such a fight and struggle, and you love the way it looks because you loved it in the first place, right? So that changed a little bit. Men's sports coats may be usable. Harris tweed that is soft and fine is good. The heavier will need an 8 cut. So in other words, she's saying if you're using your cutter to strip rather than a rotary cutter or scissors or ripping, she would say like an 8, meaning a large primitive cut, nice and wide, because those kinds of weaves are very loose and they do want to unravel. And if you cut them too thin, if you have a fancy cutter, or with your scissors, if you cut them too thin, they'll just rip while you're hooking them, right? What you can do, as you know, is put them into the washer dryer. See if you can felt them up a little bit, right? Get them a little bit thicker and the weave a little bit more felty and tighter. Fulling them, that's called fulling them. And hey, if it doesn't work the first time, put them through the wash and the dryer again. Turn the heat up on them. See if you can force them to get fuller so you can hook with them better. But some of them won't ever hook well. And that's when you have to say to yourself, if I'm still going to use it, I better cut it pretty thick, right? Because otherwise, I'm not going to pull it up without ripping it. So I'm going to use it, but I'm going to use it as a wide cut. And you can always do that. So she goes on to talk about, what works. Camel jackets are heavenly. Men's 2- and 3-piece suits are usually made out of worsted spun yarn. She's very specific. And it's all very useful because I do feel you can use all of this now. She talks about coats and jackets that are too heavy, like too thick already. And she's saying, you won't be able to use those for hooking, and that remains the same. But you can use them for a different kind of rug, like a penny rug, or an applique rug, or even a Prati rug, right? You just can't use them for hooking. You're not going to get the loops up without breaking your wrist or your thumb, or the materials. So, I like that she says you're not going to be able to use them for hooking, but you will be able to use them for other forms of rugs. Of course you are. And of course you can combine these rugs with what you're doing. You can put wool lamb's tongues on the corner of your hooked rug with your really thick wool that you love but you really cannot hook with. Of course you can do that. And with those really thin worsteds, all the sort of laundry list of things she mentioned that are no good because they're thin, you can braid with those. You can always braid with those and put a nice braided border on your hooked rug if you really want those wools to go together. There's so many ways that you can do these crossovers. Always undo garments before washing. You want all the possible dirt and loose threads to be removed. Moths love soiled wool for lunch. It's easier to wash pieces of fabric than whole garments. That's absolutely true. She says remove especially if they contain lining, and of course you always want to remove lining because lining is usually partly synthetic, at least, if not all synthetic, and saturated with color. And even if it looks like it's brown, I promise you when it hits the water, it's maroon or fuchsia. All of those brown and navy bases have a maroon or fuchsia in the dye, and that dye will reactivate. So you always want to cut your linings out of thrift store stuff. Don't throw it out. Keep it, because on another day, you want to put all those cut up linings one at a time because they all have beautiful colors, but different colors. You want to put each lining into hot water, with your citric acid or your vinegar, put wool in with it, and the wool will leach the colors out of that lining. It'll be a total potluck, what Edith O'Neill called stone soup, right? Pulling colors out of older garments. So the lining is going to be great for that, but you don't put it in the wash with your wool. Take off the buttons, the zippers, all that stuff. And the shoulder pads, I would say strings, buttons, everything. Go a step further and put them in a lingerie bag, those little lacy bags, and zip them up, all the pieces, because once you cut all those pattern pieces and return them from being a garment to a collection of pattern pieces, you really want them in some kind of a lingerie bag because they will want to unravel in the wash. And why even tempt it? Try to keep them contained, because that's also protecting your washer dryer. If they should start throttling the agitator or something like that, never said that before. All good hints, but she goes on and on about these very specific things, what'll shrink, what won't. And here comes another. I'm not even going to get through the first issue tonight, am I? I'm in really big trouble here. I'm not going to stay on for too late tonight, too, because Jay, who's usually in the next room working on his auction, is at home with his brand new dog. He's fostering a dog that I'm sure he's keeping. Beautiful little girl. It's a blue-heeled shepherd, I want to say. I think it's a shepherd. A sheepdog. Not a shepherd. A collie. I guess it's a collie, a blue-heeled. If anybody knows, let me know. I've never seen this kind of dog. Beautiful gray and white spotted dog. And my daughter Jocelyn is over there helping give the dog a bath. So I won't go till 9 tonight, but I'll probably go to definitely 8:30, just so you know time-wise. But another feature that is in every episode, every issue of this magazine is, oh, Lisa, good to see you. Always happy to see you. Oh, you make me think of Pennsylvania every time. That's on the list. That is way up there on the list. In every issue, there is this adorable page. Musings, reflections, deliberations, meditations, thoughts. And it's a collection of quotes. And they're very random, but they're so good. You know, this little periodical, how much joy have we gotten out of it so far? Look at how little it is. So much I mean, I haven't even read every page by any means. So much. So, for example, let's find one. Creativity is not a driving force. It happens. It creates itself, and you have to be open. Meume Oda. And this one by Cervantes, it's called The Time. There is a time for some things, and a time for all things, a time for great things, and a time for small things. That is so sweet, isn't it? And Lauren Bacall, imagination is the highest kite that one can fly. Just so fantastic. A whole page full of quotes. Super inspiring, very different quotes. And then there's always this feature called Pillow Talk, where she talks about it like a three-dimensional pillow. And this is so helpful because, so much joy. This is so helpful because I get so many questions about finishing pillows, and I do have at least one video, at least one on finishing a pillow. It's useful to talk about because there's always the question, how do I finish this? My walls are covered, my floors are covered, I have enough bell pulls. How can I finish this? And then people start thinking about pillows. So Pillow Talk would come in real handy for these people. This page is always in color, Pillow Talk. And as you can see, I'm going to show you in more detail. She's got a real primitive bird up here, the triangle bird. She's got real good how-to directions here for finishing it. I'm gonna read that in a second. She's got this other sort of custom one with this fish, right? This kind of Father's Day fish. She says, cut one crow neck roll, right? So that's the big pillow. It's like a bolster pillow. Crow neck roll. Hook the piece of your choice. Finish the edge of the hooked piece so it won't ravel. She keeps saying ravel, but for me, I would say unravel. So that could be confusing. I think ravel is technically and historically the right word, but I think that language has changed pretty quickly. Cut one continuous piece of color-coordinated wool, measuring the same size as the finished hooked pattern. Join it to the hooking with a blind stitch, and then go back and fancy it up with decorative stitches, such as a buttonhole stitch, and stuff it. And then she talks about the way that you measure it, all of these things. These patterns are by Vermont folk artist Laurelyn Wiles. So she really walks you through doing that particular crow neck pillow. Yeah, crow neck roll. And then she does like this feature where she says, search for the stars, and she features different people. She's going to show Elaine. She doesn't say Elaine's last name. This is so friendly, this magazine. Elaine lives with her husband, Doug, and her new baby girl, Audrey, in Palmer Lake, Colorado. She's been hooking for about 10 years, and she has a wonderful eye for color and texture. Elaine dyes her own wool and has shared her expertise due to keeping excellent records. About her rugs, pictured here, the long animal runner and the cat are Quail Hill designs. So then she talks about what the different patterns are. And she has this whole page that is just, this is Elaine, who I like to think has a little one at home at this photo, 2002, sweet pup, and this is all Elaine's work on these pages. Christine said, the magazine reminds me of spinning guild meetings where everyone chattered away and shared ideas. So fun, so cozy. It is like that, isn't it? It is like that. And I would love to see our rug hooking magazines both. I love Rug Hooking Magazine. I love Atha, but I would love to see them both get back to this cozy conversational tone. Because I often feel just overwhelmed. There's so much talent. There's so much to see. I'd love to see them recenter a little more cozy. Because it is a cozy craft. And for God's sake, it's a thrift craft, isn't it? It's a scrap craft. This is something that this Wall Street Journal really has in spades. So, for example, all of Elaine's rugs that she's talking about, what they have in common is that they're all animal rugs. And she goes on further to say, a little bit of a historical blurb, all God's creatures, great and small. In the past, animals were central in the lives of the earliest settlers. That has resulted in a parade of rugs with a charm that has withstood the test of time. This included household pets that gave them joy, love, and watched over the home. There are many rugs depicting animals used for transportation, and we must not forget chickens, cows, pigs, the forest habitat, the deer, bunnies, and such. The drawings were simple and naive, still cherished to this day and worth the effort to duplicate. The old rugs are very expensive and out of reach for the average person's pocket, so we do what comes natural. We affix our own pet's personality and color into the rug for ourselves. We follow the example of rug hookers of the past in paying tribute to our favorite friends of the four-legged variety, even if they are only a memory of a happier time. So I just love this sentiment. She's using Elaine's rugs because Elaine has hooked a lot of animal rugs. She's using Elaine's rugs as an example. And she's saying, you know, who wouldn't love these beautiful antique rugs that pop up at auction? But, you know, who has $2,000, $5,000, or even $500, right, to spend on a rug? I would think long and hard before I spent that on a rug. You know, obligations in life, right? There's other things going on besides acquiring rugs. Not everybody is there. And she's saying, you know, look at these old rugs, with these antique rugs, they are copyright free. You can copy them. You can insert your own pet. You can use the same colors, same designs. Pay tribute to them. If you can't have the thing itself, pay tribute to the thing. And, you know, what a great subject. I love how she incorporated the idea of early Americans, and of course we're talking about the middle 19th century and up if we're talking about hooked rugs, but she's talking about how people would, you know, back in the early days of hooking, use animals for all different reasons: transportation animals, farm animals, work animals, domestic animals that are just there for joy and happiness, using them as a subject for a rug. It's a great idea. It's a great reminder that is a great subject. And then she shows things like this, just these sort of random pictures. And this is foreshadowing, right? Because she's showing remember this was the pattern she showed earlier, the Reach for the Stars with the crow on the ladder. This is an advertisement of a great sweatshirt. There's lots of advertisements in this book. And like I said, I was looking up some of them, but most of these companies are not there anymore, sadly. But take a look at this, right? Because this is a technique she's going to show us later. Braiding wool, you can see all different colors, dropping it in the dye pot, and you're going to get this crazy effect. And then look at how nice it hooks into Indian corn. So she's going to show you this a few pages on. It's just, isn't this unbelievable? I mean, I'm just blown away by this. And then in every issue she has a feature. They have a feature called Wool Street Anywhere USA, like it's the town. And she talks about a certain store. This is the Woolen Pine Cone in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And she talks about the person who runs it. Carol Lyle is the proprietor. And it's like a whole page shout out to this particular store. And I'm not sure if you're in Colorado, let me know if this store is still here. I forgot to check this one. But what a great thing. Tribute to stores, whether they're there or not. It's so important to our history to record and to know where the stores were, where the teachers were, where the hookers were. This is part of our story. This needs to be documented in the same way that other arts and crafts are documented. We're not documented in the same way. So this is going to help a lot. All of these issues of Wall Street Journal, it's going to help a lot. And here's where she does her braided dyeing. And she shows you just how to do it. Old Farm Red is what she calls this particular color. And she even tells you she's starting with camel colored wool. So I'm going to assume that that's camel colored door wool, which is like a stock color, right? They still have camel. It's always the same color. It's like red heart yarn. Gold is always gold. It's never been anything else. It probably never will be anything else. Oh, really, Catherine? Ask your mom if the Woolen Pine Cone in Colorado Springs is still there. Road trip. Braided dyeing. Now this is great. This is a great technique, braided dyeing. I do some of this in classes, like I often say Cinnabon dyeing, and I knot things up and do different tie-dye techniques. This is braided dyeing. It's really easy to understand, right? You're just making a braid of your fabric. The name of the store is the Woolen Pine Cone. What a great name. Reminds me of a Hallmark movie. You know, when everything reminds me of a Hallmark movie, I'm thinking I might be watching too many Hallmark movies, but it's only for 2 months, right? It's only for 1/6 of the year that I'm just constantly taking a break from Cheers and watching Hallmark movies, and it is so good. So the braided, right? She's just got 3 strands of different colors, and she's literally going to drop them in. She tells you just what she does. She's going to drop them into a pot of dye, and she's telling you the base is camel, and she's putting in Pro-Chem magenta, sun yellow, and blue. And it's going to come up with those Indian corn colors that I just showed you. And it's obviously it's not going to reach the places inside the braid that are tight and interior, but it is going to give you this wonderful sort of spotted mottled effect. It's a different way to spot dye. It's not spooning liquid out of a mason jar. It's not squirting out of a hairdresser bottle, right? All things that we know about. It's braiding and dropping it in the water, and you're protecting part of it, maintaining the original color of much of these 3 materials because they're braided so tightly. So that's smart. In every issue, she's gonna tell you these great things, and they're all going to be useful. And then there's always a feature called like My Beginnings in Rug Hookings, and again, very personal. There's a lot to read in these. So if you are more of an inspiration person and you need a book where you flip through the pages and you just know that about yourself, this isn't going to be your favorite. But if you are a person who isn't expecting any color pictures and you're just looking to read every word, this is the thing that you need. You need every copy. And we have to help each other find every copy, right? We have to share and exchange and help each other find copies, because there's not going to be enough of these to go around for everybody who wants them, sadly. The whole back of the magazine, talk about documenting, is pages of ads. Pages. They're all rug hooking ads. I mean, again, most of these companies are not there anymore. Some of them are. But it's a great, solid list. And then she closes with in the beginning of the end, and she kind of more sort of storytelling, interesting, definitely rug hooking related. So lots of writing in every episode, and so beautiful. And she publishes letters at the end, actual handwritten letters from people who have written, and in this case saying, "Can't wait to see the first issue. Bonnie, what a great idea. I wish you every success." All kinds of very personal letters handwritten on this last page that she shares. So good, isn't it? And then, okay, the end. We'll look at this too. I'll go a little bit further tonight. Keeping of wool. And you can see one more color photo for the back of the cover. You see the way she's keeping the wool. Just thoughts, in one word: baskets, wooden totes, old sewing drawers, a cigar box, fruit boxes, kettles, speckled and copper, chipped, rusted, and leaky. Look around you. I guess that was more than one word. Now there is practical, and there is practically ugly. I know those wonderful big tubs that come in every color, shape, and depth, clear and solid, with handles, without handles, sectioned off, sealed. By all means use them, but keep them out of sight. Slide them under, cover them up, put something in front of them, put them behind. Then get out your baskets, bowls, totes, crates, crocks. Seeing the wool from your last dyeing session is going to get you back to the dye pot sooner rather than later. If you're reading this, you are a creator. You can fold your wool, bag your wool, roll it up, tie it with a contrasting stripe, lay it flat, fluff it up, stand it on end, or toss it together like a salad. Now while you're doing this, smell it, rub it on your cheek, the one on your face. Hold it over your eyes, breathing deeply. An instant cure for headache. Oh, that is so nice. Talk to it. Make sure it knows you are coming back often to visit. In the meantime, it will be right there waiting for you, next to your chair, where you can see it and enjoy it and drink in this feast for the eyes that stirs our souls, heals our minds, resolves our problems, the antidote to all of our cares for the time being. There's only one rule in Wool Keeper's life: never throw it away. The consequences, she wrote, "Oh, you'll be so sorry!" Exclamation point. So she's making the great point, that if you can, keeping it safe from moths, keeping it tubbed up in plastic is one thing, but she's making the great point that when you are surrounded by these sort of old-timey, appropriate age kind of fitting Crocs, folky looking things, it's so much more inspiring to look around and for your eye to catch those things. So much more inspiring than the sight of a plastic tub with a Sharpie marker that says blues, right? if you can, if you're able to, if you have yard sales, if you have thrift stores and you come across these kinds of things, um, it is an ideal, isn't it? Catherine says, couldn't find the woolen pine cone with a Google search. Yikes. Yeah. I mean, 2002, that's, we're talking about 20 years ago. I suppose that's a long time, I guess. Yeah, I had just turned 30, I guess, and I really thought that was the end of the world at that point, right? Like, yeah, right around that time. I thought it was so old. Oh my God. If only I was that age again, and if only I was the same size as when I used to think I was also really fat, would be really nice. So I'm moving forward to Volume 1, Number 2, An Extraordinary Magazine for Hookers with Heart. The Wall Street Journal, July 2002. So let's look at this one a little bit. I'm probably only going to get to half of this tonight because it's too good. It's too good to rush it. So she has her introduction again, and she does credit due. So she sort of introduces new things as it goes on. This one is still skinny, but maybe a couple pages thicker than the one before. I think as it evolves, she's realizing there's lots more to say and a few things to add. She does her hooking, how to begin again. Again, new words, and it makes it interesting and fresh again. Primitive Spirit, great Primitive Spirit ad. So beautiful. You know, I just love seeing the ads. I mean, that in itself is worth having a good look at this magazine. Dear, oh dear, here we go. The Primitive Mind of Miss Prim by Karen Kale. This one is about negative space. Let me wet my whistle. You're going to love this one. Remember last time she talked about perfection and how you should never use that word lightly? Negative space. In my studies in drawing, I was first introduced to the theory of negative space. The idea revolutionized the world I saw. It influenced my drawing and my painting. Since I considered rug hooking with wool, since I considered hooking painting with wool, this concept works beautifully with designing rugs. We are object-oriented. We see in the world around us objects, such as trees, a flower, a face, a house, a cat. When we observe an object, we are looking at its shape. Now stop and look beyond the object. There is a shape around the object that is created by the object. This is the negative space. Picture cutting cookie dough with a cookie cutter. You have your cookie, and the dough that's left is the negative space. What you need to know is that you couldn't see the object without the negative space. Where would the moon be without the night sky? All this is to say that negative space has shape and has importance. It has just as beautiful a shape as positive space. Negative space can be a sizable part of a hooked rug design. It can be 75% of what you see when all is said and done. Since this is true, careful consideration and planning should go into all of the negative space in your design. Often in a rug design, the negative space is quietly supporting the starring roles belonging to the positive space. Occasionally, the starring role goes to the negative space. An example of the negative space being the starring role would be a central silhouette of an animal, for instance, hooked in a dark solid with the negative space done in vibrant hit-or-miss colors. Gosh, I've done that. I wish I had my cookie cutter cat with me because that's exactly what that is. The shape of a dark cat with all these crazy hit-or-miss stripes behind it. Many old primitives use this style to glorious success. Most often in my rugs, the negative spaces are strong supporting elements, grabbing attention in more subtle ways. In a design that is full of color and movement, the best choice for the negative spaces around the motifs would be a quiet treatment. The negative space would help the motifs to stand out and allow the colors to sing. If the negative space is too bright or bold, it makes the positive space look dull. But the negatives don't have to be boring. One idea for a subtle but vibrant negative space is to create an all-over pattern of little dots using a different color that is close in value to the background color. Hook only 2 or 3 loops for dots. The effect is like a field of grape hyacinths among grass. I like to make the negative space play off the major colors in the rug. Now she's going to talk very specifically now, so I'm going to, well, no, I'm not going to stop because it's too good. This gives the negative space fullness and vitality. One way to do this is to make negative space the opposite color from the major motif. She talks about how our color wheel can be handy for this. My favorite complementary color to play is red and green. Those are great opposites, right? A red rose looks rosier with bits of muted green around it. The greens can sneak in here and there like confetti. And don't think that red and green means Christmas. Think celery greens and mossy greens with peachy reds and muted pinkish reds. A color has so many faces to choose from. So she goes on to talk more specifically about sunsets and cloudy skies. This is very good information because it makes you think, just as she wants you to, about the negative space. And, you know, when I think about it, if you can picture, for example, a Hutchinson rug, the Hutchinsons always referred to the background as marble cake because it's like the sort of vanillas and browns, all those mixes of colors, right? Marble cake. That's exactly what it looks like. We often look at a rug hooking pattern with a lot of open space in the background, particularly the primitive country folky type patterns, right? And when you do, your eye can break things down in different ways. For example, Magdalena Briner Eby would always fill up those empty spaces with her beloved farm animals, upside down, right side up, diagonal, everywhere. All just placing them into that negative space to eat up that negative space. Nowadays, I think it's pretty common to see rugs hooked in a very kind of Tiffany stained glass style. That's another great way when you have a large background and a lot of negative space, you break it up Tiffany glass style, right? Stained glass style. It doesn't have to be solder colored like dark gray, black, or silver. It could be any color. I mean, I did one of my pieces recently, one of the monthly ones, and I think the color was like plum that I used to do the stained glass part. It can be any color. It can be yellow. It can be any color. But it's an interesting thing to think about. And when you find that you're stuck in your composition and you've got something in the middle that you like, but you feel that there's too much space around and you don't want to do a big border and you don't want to do the big clunky corners, it's just not what you're feeling this time, you might want to think about how to break up that negative space in the way that she's describing with colors, complementary colors, but also literally breaking it up like you're suddenly a cubist, right? We talked about this a little bit this week on the Coffee Time episodes because we were talking about Molly Colgrove's book and how she so often uses Photoshop type programs to put in different filters and backgrounds. And those computer aids, whatever you have on your computer, or can download as a trial and see if you like it, which never works, does it? Because you put your credit card in and then you're paying for the next 10 years regardless. But these programs really are great because they can, with filters, show you how to break down that background and give you the lines. They just give you the lines. So that's certainly worth something, right? It's nice to get that stuff for free, but that's worth something. So the conversation about negative space is an extremely useful one. And then she goes on to talk about dyeing, more about dyeing. She gives us this beautiful pattern. It's almost like you're expecting birds to fly out of this giant apple pie, right? So patriotic, as American as apple pie. Just so good, isn't it? So good. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Tom Baker's Sweet Shop. Here we go. Baked breakfast oatmeal. Another recipe page. Only one in each issue, right? She's not overdoing it. But she realizes the value of cozy. And she realizes how that there's so much crossover for so many people. Just taking a recipe break in between talking about intense rug hooking subjects, right? And then for this issue of I'm a Hooker, IMA, she's talking about just foundations. And I have to say this particular article is a little bit dated. She talks about 4 backings: jute, hemp, linen, and rame. So it's a little bit, you know, we're not talking about monk's cloth. She's calling burlap jute. It's a little bit dated. She's making good points about everything. Any backing that you can hook into, Dave's not with us tonight, but including a dish towel, any kind of a backing that you can pull a loop through, you can use that backing. Do you remember last December, right before Christmas, I found a Fair Isle sweater I would have loved to have cut up and used in my hooking as a sweater material, because we were doing that last winter, and we will get back to that again. It's just a busy season now. But I found this Fair Isle and I loved it. And I didn't want to give it up. And I couldn't cut it because, of course, when you look at the back of Fair Isle, there's all those little stitches, over the yoke where all the patterning is. All those little stitches and threads, and those are going to fall apart as soon as you cut them. So it's not going to work. It's going to atomize. So I couldn't use it, and I started hooking into it instead. I stretched that sweater over my little hooking frame, and I started hooking loops into it, and it worked great. So that works too. Anything in terms of backing, Ima says, anything that you can use that holds your loops is a good backing. You might as well use it. Have to think about whether you want to use it on the floor, right? Because some things are more durable and sturdy than others. But if it's just a piece, not just a piece, if it's a piece that's going on the wall as a work of art, you can use anything that your loops will stay in. And you should. And then, of course, her musings, reflections, deliberations, meditations, and thoughts. Women and Elephants Never Forget. That's a classic Dorothy Parker. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? That has no attribution, but that's really nice. Happy he who dare courageously to defend what he loves, Ovid. Oh, they're so beautiful. Oh, I like this one, Henry Van Dyke. He's one of my favorites. Time is too slow for those who wait, too slow for those who fear, too long for those who grieve, too short for those who rejoice. Just a whole page of sayings. So beautiful. And then she talks about spot dyeing with a microwave oven. Now that is going to be useful and handy. Absolutely. Oh boy, don't get me started. There's this whole page on the history of rug hooking. I'm gonna skip over that because it's something we talk about a lot, and I can see already just glancing at it that we have newer information since 2002 that brings us away from this sort of origins in Scandinavia, at least in terms of using a hook. Using a needle, yes, but using a hook, no. So a little bit of this has changed. History is always a moving target until someone finds that next key thing, the sort of Rosetta Stone that changes everything. So this is a little bit dated, at least as part of the history. Still interesting, of course. And Pillow Talk, another issue of Pillow Talk here. And just glancing at this, you can see great back of the pillow idea using a man's shirt. Fantastic. And there's that as American as apple pie. And then she's giving you here for a dyeing recipe. Do you see where it says pie crust? That's dyed wool, right? She's showing you and she's giving you the recipe for doing the pie crust on this pie. She's showing you how she dyed that. Isn't that great? Just like the braided tip in the last episode, this tip is pie crust. It just doesn't get any better than this. And now Wool Street Anywhere USA. So in this episode, in this issue, Carriage House Primitives and Cottage Sampler Tea Room. And I read this article, St. Ansgar, Iowa. I didn't find it. That's we're like 2 for 2 negative, right, so far. And I read this article because it was actually a tea room in northern Iowa that people were visiting, and the owner converted the potting shed in the back to a rug hooking studio because she started rug hooking, and it was becoming very popular in her area. And she talks about how in the store, which I'm afraid is not there anymore, the wool is neatly folded and displayed in primitive cupboards, even in an old pie safe. Dyes are displayed in the original Putnam dye rack. The studio also has antique rugs for sale. And this is what the store looked like. I mean, isn't that... It's just heartbreaking if it's not there. But according to Google, just like the last one, it doesn't come up. I love that, using the Putnam dye display things, to actually display the dyes still is just impossibly charming. Now, I have to read this article. The one sort of weak spot, I'll say, of this publication that I'm in love with, and it's not a criticism, it's a little bit tricky to look at for me now because the sourcing is not great. In other words, not everything says who it's by, where it comes from, particularly quotes in whole articles. So sometimes that's the thing, because I would love to say, well, this is by, I happen to know that this article is by Michelle Miccarelli because I'm putting 2 and 2 together, but it doesn't actually say that it's by Michelle, but I know that it is. She's She's a good friend. Another feature called All Creatures Great and Small. So I'm going to read this to you because you know how much I love Michelle, and this is a great article. 47 years ago, during a hospital stay, as part of his therapy, this is Michelle, my dad learned to hook rugs. He had tuberculosis, which requires lung surgery and a long recovery. The therapist rolled a frame over his bed and he hooked several rugs. All of them had animal themes. One of the rugs was a Scotty dog. The rug was on the floor all of my growing up years. It was my favorite. Its burlap deteriorated and fell apart about 20 years ago after being stored in a damp basement. A few years ago, I was able to buy the pattern at an Atha Region No. 1 Rug School auction. I jumped on the opportunity. I'm the director of the school and the auctioneer. I could hardly hold back tears when I saw it. The pattern was out of print. I transferred it to linen because the burlap was old and yellow. I knew immediately that I would try to emulate the colors in my memory. The rug is small, 23 by 26. Let me show you the rug before we go on, and I'll show it to you again in focus, all right? I'll show it in a second. The rug is small, so I decided to hook it from leftovers and scraps. I first assembled all the blacks and very darks I had around. These included greens, blues, maroons, plaids, oranges, grays, as well as blacks. I hooked the dog first, starting with the bow in hot pink. This wool was also assembled from scraps and cut strips from previous projects. I hooked them dark to light to form a casual swatch so that I could separate the front and back of the bow as well as the petals of the rose, which I hooked later. I hooked the dog hit or miss with the blacks, using directional hooking to give him a doggy shape and a chubby belly. I dyed the inner background by soaking Door Natural in lots of water and floating an assortment of colors onto the wool. The effect gives an opalescent look to the wool, which I find more interesting than flat white or pastels. I hooked it around the dog so that it echoed his shape and in from the outside till they met. So let me say that one more time. This is the process that she did. I dyed the inner background, the white. I dyed the inner background by soaking Door Natural, which is the plain door wool, not like the bleached, right? Just the natural. That the bleached white is more expensive. Just the natural, and lots of water, and floating an assortment of other colors on the wool, right? So she's not tying it with twine. She's not tying it around a pipe, which is something she does a lot now. She's just floating it on top, right? This is the idea of the confetti dyeing too from last month's Rug Hooking magazine. And it's taking a little bit of the color, and she's saying it gives you this great opalescent effect. It's smart, right? So spotty pink to purple was used as the dividing line between the inner background and the stripe of periwinkle, which divides the border from the inner background. I'll show you again. Leaves were hooked, so she talks very specifically about putting it together. The ribbon stripes on the outside border were hooked in the same spot, very specific. The finishing I also wanted to keep simple. I gave it a good steaming. A piece of black wool was used as a taping all around the back. I used no piping and no whipping. I found hooking this memory most enjoyable and finished it in about 6 weeks. It is not my usual style of hooking, and I found it enlightening to do something new. So I think that is a beautiful article. I'm going to have to remind her next time I see her about this. It'll get her going for sure. You know, what a great emotional moment when you're remembering something of your dad's that had been lost 20 years ago and you see it pop up again. I mean, at that point you lose your mind. You pay anything for that pattern because it's part of your family history. And then underneath she showed, she hooked Michelle Jr. That's her daughter's then dachshund. She now has a Yorkie like me. We love our little dogs. But that was one of her past dogs. So Michelle hooked that for Michelle Jr. So cute, huh? So again, another great article. Now this is great, but this is a good. I'm going to wrap up with this issue. We got to half a year. Is that pathetic? I mean, but I feel I'm enjoying myself immensely tonight, not just because this cup is like very, very sort of Bacchus-sized cup. I'm so in a groove with this book. It's just such a good connection reading these things. This is one of these things that is not sourced at all. So I'm going to read you this next passage because it's fantastic and it has absolutely no reference to where it came from or who wrote it. Coffee bag rug, and this is in quotes. Cut the coffee bag. If not procurable, any coarse sacking may be substituted into the size and shape desired. Then cut pieces of wool into strips 1/2 inch wide and, with a coarse needle, darn them in and out lengthwise through the material, not drawing them flat to the foundation, right? So just to recap, she's basically talking about pulling up loops for hooking, but not drawing them flat, right? Because if you drew them flat, you would be sewing at that point, wouldn't you? It would be flat right against the surface. But leaving loops nearly an inch in height between each stitch. An inch, that's exactly what it says, so that's hard to follow for sure. Taste in arranging the colors is of course needed. After the darning is finished, the whole surface is evenly clipped. So that's why, thank you, please give a thumbs up. These are great. I love these evenings with us, but please help out the channel too by giving us a thumbs up. And I see people subscribing. That's nice too. The reason that they're drawing their loops up so high is because they plan to clip them, right? This is going to be what the British call a clipped rug. So this is why they're an inch tall. This is a lot of wool going into this. Make sure the whole surface is evenly clipped. A very pretty style is to make a black border and fill in the center with gray, dotted at intervals with circles of blue or scarlet. Or the center may be darned haphazard with a variety of bright colors. Other combinations will suggest themselves to the worker, who must be necessarily guided somewhat by the hues of the rags from which she is to manufacture the rug. Then it says, and I don't know if this is related, it's the same paragraph, but again, no source. When America prospered, rug hooking declined. When the economy declined, rug hooking was more popular. There was an upsurge of interest toward the end of the 19th century when an itinerant Civil War veteran named Edward Sands Frost created stencils that could be used to design rugs. He apparently took the ideas for stencils from the rugs he saw at farmhouses on his peddler's route and used the stencils to print patterns that he then sold to housewives on his route. There was again another upsurge of interest during the Great Depression of the 1930s. Several very creative entrepreneurs stepped briefly onto the rug hooking stage, but the most interesting of these was a woman, a single mother, who marched into the spotlight during the Depression and stayed there ever since, even after her departure from this earth. Pearl K Mcgowan started out, it's going to choke me up, in the 1930s as a moonlighting pattern designer, selling her patterns to the students of Mrs. Caroline Saunders, and developed her business to the point where she had over 1,000 patterns and created a commercial business that has encouraged and provided the framework for rug hooking ever since. And again, that's just called coffee bag rug. That's what I read here, and as you can see, there's no attribution at all. It's beautifully written. Certainly the beginning of it was very historical, taken from a historical source. And then our pages of beautiful ads, places that I hope some of them are still there. Different places too. The Conwego stars. The ladies featured are from left to right. It says who they are. The Conwego stars. And look at, I hadn't looked at this one yet. This great image. I don't know where Conwego is. Maybe somebody else does, but have you seen this lately? 5/2/2002 on the bottom of a photograph. Isn't that funny? We've moved so fast in such a short time. I don't feel like it's a great thing, do you? Oh, and this is really nice. Maybe we'll end. Yeah, let's end on. Let me look at this last page first, and then I'm going to end on something very nice that's written. So, another one of her three-dimensional projects. Remember, she gave us the crow bolster pillow in the last issue. This time, she gives us the hooked star box, and she's showing you She's telling you exactly how to hook this three-dimensional block like a play block. She's showing you just how to do it, right? Including the shape of the star, all these great instructions. This happens a lot. So in every issue, she's going to give you at least one three-dimensional thing that you might be interested in hooking. And just having those skills in your sort of rug hooking grab bag of skills, whether it's a pillow or a block, hooking anything that's three-dimensional is going to be extremely helpful, particularly if you don't have a sewing background, right? And you're not used to sewing things and thinking in a three-dimensional way. These very basic projects that she gives are going to be wonderful starting points. I'm just going to read this to end this episode. This is by Sally and Alice of Kindred Spirits, and it's called A Story of Kindred Spirits. 12 years ago, we discovered rug hooking. Both of us adorn our homes with antiques and have always purchased old rugs at antique shows. These hooked treasures proudly joined the samplers hanging on the walls, were rolled and stacked on a cupboard shelf next to the quilts, or sometimes were displayed on the floor. We were hooked on the wonderful texture and faded colors of these finds. The rugs were valued as treasure from time gone by, and we found it sad that no one made rugs like this anymore. The skill and time it must have taken to achieve that beautiful shaded look was impressive, and we were captivated by the folk art look of these primitive pieces. Our enlightenment came one summer while Alice was on vacation in Nags Head, North Carolina. On her only allotted shopping day, she wandered into a rug hooking shop, and things have never been the same since. This small shop offered rug hooking supplies, a few samples of hooked rugs, and the item that got us hooked on hooking, hand-dyed wool. Smitten with the textiles used in hooking, we taught ourselves to hook and began putting patterns for hooked pieces in our books alongside the stitcheries and sewn designs. Our first published hooking design was a small purse featured in the book Gatherings, I think I know that one too, over 12 years ago. Little by little, we discovered that rug hooking is alive and well. Thank you very much, and enthusiastically tended by many talented and lovely hookers. We continued putting on one or two hooking designs in each book over the next few years. The awareness of rug hooking was growing, as evidenced by the questions and interest displayed as we traveled and taught around the country. About 5 years ago, hooking seemed to go mainstream as women who had been participating in other needle arts turned their attention to hooking, fell in love, and began to seek out others with the same fascination. The popularity of our book and patterns has been based on the fact that we try to look at things a little bit differently. In our designs, we like to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary, or at least into something a little funky and unexpected. I guess the greatest pleasure we get in designing is to see how we can use the established in a way no one else has. We like to think we are at the head of the line in using hooking in creative and new ways. Hooking rugs for the floor will undoubtedly always be the main use for this art form, but there are so many other applications that are appealing as a journey into the unexpected. Just as the sumptuous textures and colors are appealing for the rugs, they are also wonderful in other areas of home decor. We have designed a hooked pillow, photo mats, baskets, boxes, and furniture embellishments. There are so many other ideas. Hook a headboard for a bed. Attach a whimsical hooked piece to the top of it. A headboard is a great idea. Now I'm going to be stuck on that one. That's a great idea because, yeah, you've got your upholstered headboards, but yeah, a hooked headboard would be super sturdy and durable and lasting, wouldn't it? A whimsical hooked piece for the top of a child's toy chest, using hooking as upholstery fabric. One of the most creative ways we've seen hooking used was by Ann Wallace, a friend of ours from Clarksville, Tennessee. She hooked a piece featuring her pets that was sized to fit the back of a wing chair. Beyond home decor, many other creative opportunities exist for use in hooking. Dolls are very appealing and are an innovative way to use hooking. Another friend, Jenny Rupp, we know that name, creates one-of-a-kind hooked characters with charm and wit. Turn your attention to seasonal designs, Christmas ornaments, tree topper stars, Easter eggs, jack-o'-lanterns, etc. At our shop, we do a lot of hooking into wool. Several years ago, we wanted to find some way to wear our hooking. An entire hooked garment was too heavy and cumbersome to be appealing. We tried hooking into wool fabric, and the results were fabulous. So this would have to be, I just want to say, this wouldn't be like door wool. This wouldn't be milled wool. This would be the kind of wool that, like they were saying earlier in issue number 1, that you can really see the weave, right? Because where there's a weave, you get these tiny sort of window pane openings that you could, in theory, hook into. But you can't hook into just any wool, right? Because if it's too tightly woven or felted or fulled at all, like milled wool should be, it's not going to work. But hooking into a woven wool would be great, would be fantastic. It would be the same as hooking into a sweater. We tried hooking into, the results were fabulous. We now hook designs into our homemade wool jackets and vests, as well as bags, purses, eyeglass cases, and other wearables. The creative use of hand-dyed wool does not stop with the hook. Wool applique and penny mats are very popular and are wonderful partners to hooked items. Just picture that hooked headboard with matching wool appliqued pillows stretched across the top of the bed. Across the room is a hooked stool placed in front of a comfy old stuffed chair, on which rests a hooked doll with appliqued wool clothes. A long, thin penny mat is displayed on top of a chest of drawers. Wow! Exclamation point. We have been so blessed to being able to make our living doing what we love the best. We have no doubt that we were created to create. The feelings of satisfaction and contentment in working with our hands is not to be missed. The rugs seem to be a byproduct of joy in the process. Thanks for liking our creations. Sally and Alice, Kindred Spirits. Fantastic. Fantastic. So these are just amazing. And even on the back cover of this one, a bit of a mashup, the sort of My Rug Hooking Journey. You know how she features somebody in every episode for the My Rug Hooking Journey. On this episode, Chandler, Arizona, Julie Crotty, Crotty, with Cookie, PB, and Lassie with her 3 dogs. So she's again featuring, I think it was Elaine in the first episode. She's featuring somebody and then writing something about the kinds of rugs that they hook. So in every issue, there's going to be a featured store. There's going to be a featured person. There's going to be a featured 3-dimensional project. There's going to be I'm a Hooker, that great advice coming from Karen Kale. I mean, it's just, oh, you love these, Kirsten. They're yours. They're yours. I love them too. Where there's a weave, there's a way. Uh-oh, Mom, is that the next T-shirt? Is that the next T-shirt I'm going to have printed to wear on the Coffee Times? Where there's a weave, there's a way. That is so good. Oh, I love that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Cocktail Time. You know what? Needless to say, we're going to be looking at, where's issue number 3? We're going to be looking at this on Monday. The Wall Street Journal. Appropriately enough, October. We're a little bit late, but it's still going to work. I'm trying to figure out if it was like a sort of uniform, a kind of standardized press that published them on the same month, because it seems to be 4 for every year. That doesn't seem to waver. But this is the one that's closest to where we are now. Halloween last weekend, Thanksgiving coming up, American Thanksgiving. So we'll look at this on Monday, and we will just blast through. We have dozens of issues of Wall Street Journal. We're going to blast through them for a while on Coffee Time, I think. I might sort of take breaks after next week and intersperse, get some other stuff in for people who like more sort of contemporary conversation during Coffee Time. But we're going to nail all of these issues and get the real sort of fruit out of them, because they are so good. And there's so much to say. They're not in print, and they will be lost for the people who do not have the means or the ability or not lucky enough to find these issues of Wall Street Journal. So I think it's very important to put this stuff out there and for you to be able to enjoy it before all these issues are gobbled up, right? God forbid they get thrown out. I'm sure many, many have. Over the years, people just don't realize how important and special this stuff is. But again, we need to share. I think there will be a sort of surge in popularity of the Wall Street Journal as we do these episodes in the near future. So if you are sitting on a bunch of them or any duplicates, please let us know. If you're in the Facebook group, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club, please let us know, because there will be people who are really intensely hungry for these episodes and for getting at least some of these issues in their hands. So if you have some to share, to give, to sell, please let us know. It would be great. Christine, love listening. I'm hooking my sister's Christmas gift. Oh, I'm so glad. See, it was an episode where you didn't have to look up a lot, which I think is nice too. It is really nice. Oh, it was a lovely episode. Thank you. Doreen, good to see you. Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad if you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed it. I love our cozy Friday nights. In busy weekend, the kids are getting vaccinated first thing in the morning. First shot. It's going to be a double one. It's going to be a two-parter. But that'll be first thing in the morning, and I'm real happy about that. And again, I want to remind you that I will be teaching in person in Madison, Connecticut this weekend, Pilgrim Hat Prodi at Madison Wool. So please sign up for that. There is some space in that class. I would love to see you there. I'm not doing a lot of teaching until the new year because of the book commitment. So I would love to see you there if you're at all able to come. It would be wonderful to have you. I saw the Wall Street Journal for sale on Abe books. Okay. Check with me on the price first, Mom, because if they're coming out for like $25, $30, that might be too much. So you can also borrow mine, of course. I wish we could start some kind of a library, where we could like really organize the shifting of materials around. We'll have to think about that too as a New Year project. Would be good. Yeah, there would be some on Abe. There's often some on eBay. I have not seen them yet on, for example, Facebook Marketplace. But if you are on Facebook, Rug Hooking Buy and Sell, and some of the other rug groups that are more sort of wool applique, because it's not an all hooking book, and I think as time goes on, it sort of becomes a bit more diverse, a little bit. So talking more about penny rugs and different forms of rag rugs. So sometimes they pop up in other wool buy and sell groups. So if you're on Facebook, check all of that. And if you're not on Facebook, just give a shout out, a flare. You can write me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com, and I will certainly let you know. I have many doubles. I just need to go through them. So I'll have to do that too. And we'll all pool our resources and see what we can do as far as spreading the love with this periodical. Thank you, Carol. Oh, Gidget says there is one on Etsy and eBay. Okay, good. So hop on it, because they probably won't be there for long. If you are loving the first two, you're going to love all. But again, it's not a picture book. It's a mostly reading book, and it's an inspiring book, very heavy on text, right? But that's the joy of this particular periodical. It's got a lot of heart. So have a great weekend, everybody. I will so look forward to seeing you on Monday. I will put up the swatch set, the Food Glorious Food 35-piece swatch set, and I'll put up the dye class for the stockings were hung, and that will be a pre-recorded class. So as soon as I record it, and I'll set a date for recording it, maybe next weekend, I can just start sending the supplies out with tons of dye colors, pots and squirt bottles, and you can get going with your dyeing your nylon stockings and hooking Grenfell style. So that's coming up too. Hopefully I see you sooner rather than later. In the meantime, have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday, everybody. Take care.